beneath the glass-like towers of Zephyria Prime, where 3 purple suns made dancing shadows through thin clouds, a single father swept hallways that shined like captured starlight. Marcus Chen moved through the Imperial Academy's halls as if no one could see him, his old work uniform looking very different from the flowing robes of alien royalty who walked past him without even looking. In the Academy's east wing, Princess Lyrai sat quiet as a rock. Her glowing skin had become dull after years of being alone, while far above in the Empress Tower, golden tears ran down old cheeks. What none of them knew was that this normal Tuesday would break the quiet of hundreds of years and change the future of 2 worlds forever. Before we start, subscribe now so you don't miss more amazing stories like this one. Oh, and before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love hearing from you and always read every message. The Imperial Academy of Zephyria Prime stretched across the floating city like a crown jewel, its glowing walls beating with the heart of an old civilization. Student pods floated through hallways in the air while holographic teachers appeared from crystal points, teaching the art of space diplomacy to the galaxy's best young minds. Marcus Chen pushed his cleaning cart through the Academy's grand entrance hall, where students from dozens of worlds mixed beneath a ceiling that showed real-time pictures of faraway galaxies. His dark hair was streaked with early gray, and rough hands held the cart's handle with quiet strength. At 38, he had been cleaning these halls for 3 years, ever since the mining accident on Kepler 442b had left him without a wife and desperate for work that could support his daughter Emma back on Earth. "Look, it's the human janitor," whispered Vexari, a tall Zentoran noble with skin like polished black stone. His friends, a mix of rich young people from the Andromeda Council, turned to watch Marcus with the easy meanness of those born into power. "I heard he tried to sit in on alien biology classes," laughed Kethmore, his forearms waving dramatically. "Can you imagine? A cleaning worker thinking he could understand the hard stuff of galaxy biology." The group's laughter spread through the entrance hall like poison in still water. Marcus kept working, carefully wiping down the pearl-colored surfaces, his movements steady even though his chest burned. He had learned long ago that having dignity meant finishing the job no matter who was watching. Near the great viewing window, Princess Lyrai sat alone on a floating meditation platform. Her skin, once said to shimmer like captured moonbeams, looked dull and lifeless. For 7 years since the neural plague had taken her voice, she had not spoken a single word. The medical groups from 3 star systems had said her condition was permanent, a tragedy that had made the light dim in the entire Zephyrian court. "Even the silent princess gets more respect than a human cleaner," Vexari continued, his voice carrying the special meanness of youth not used to getting in trouble. Marcus stopped for the shortest moment, his cloth hovering over the surface he was cleaning. His brown eyes found Princess Lyrai across the huge space, noticing how her shoulders got tight at the words, how her fingers curled slightly against the platform's edge. In that moment, something passed between them, a recognition of shared loneliness that went beyond species and situation. "Tomorrow," Vexari announced loudly enough for the entire entrance hall to hear, "the Academy hosts its yearly Alien Life Symposium. Perhaps our janitor friend would like to present his ideas on communication between species." The suggestion was met with a chorus of alien laughter that bounced off the crystal walls like breaking glass. But while the hall laughed, the outsider's eyes shimmered faintly, as if holding a truth older than the stars. The next morning brought a crowd of over 300 beings to the Academy's Grand Theater. The curved walls showed a wide view of the Zephyrian homeworld. Huge oceans of liquid mercury reflecting the triple sunrise and cities that floated like jellyfish through layers of rainbow atmosphere. Vexari stood at the center podium. His presentation on why understanding between different species was impossible drew approving whispers from the gathered students and teachers. His idea was simple. True understanding between very different species was impossible, and attempts at deep communication were just humans imagining aliens were like them. "The human idea of empathy," he declared, his voice echoing through the theater's perfect sound system, "is nothing more than body programming adapted for their basic social structures. To apply it to relationships between species separated by millions of years of evolution is not just foolish, it's scientifically ridiculous." In the cleaning closet beneath the main floor, Marcus kept working, supposedly invisible to the grand event above. But his ears caught every word, and his hand sometimes stopped in its wiping, as especially wrong oversimplifications reached him. Princess Lyra sat in the royal viewing box, her mother, the Empress, beside her. The Empress's golden skin had grown pale with worry over the years, and her huge amber eyes never left her daughter's still form. Court doctors stood near them, their instruments sometimes scanning the princess for any sign of brain activity, any hope of breakthrough. In fact, Vexari continued, warming to his topic, I would say that even among our own species, true emotional connection is rare. The recent case of Princess Lyra proves that even the most advanced Zephyrian medical technology cannot break through the barriers that separate one consciousness from another. The casual meanness of using the princess's condition as an example sent a wave of uncomfortable shifting through the audience. The Empress's hands tightened almost invisibly on her throne's armrests. Perhaps, Vexari said with dramatic thoughtfulness, we should ask our resident human expert for his opinion. After all, his species is famous for their emotional simplicity. All eyes turned toward the cleaning closet where Marcus stood, cleaning cloth still in hand. The theater fell silent except for the gentle hum of the building's living systems. Students turned on their recording devices, expecting entertainment at the human's expense. Marcus looked up slowly, meeting hundreds of curious, amused, and looking down on gazes. His voice, when it came, was quiet, but carried clearly through the theater's sound system. Communication isn't about being similar, he said. It's about recognition. The crowd stirred at his response. Vexari's expression shifted from amusement to mild irritation. Please enlighten us with your deep insights, the young Zentoran said, his tone dripping with fake respect. What could a cleaning worker possibly know about the hard stuff of between-species psychology? Marcus set down his cleaning supplies and walked slowly toward the center of the theater. His work boots made soft sounds against the glowing floor, and every step seemed to echo in the growing silence. No one believed he would even try, but the silence that followed spread across the room like a storm. Marcus stood at the bottom of the theater, a lone human figure surrounded by hundreds of alien watchers. His worn uniform seemed almost to glow under the room's soft lighting, and his weathered hands hung loose at his sides. You speak of barriers, Marcus said, his voice carrying a weight that seemed to surprise even himself. But every parent knows that love doesn't require language. When my daughter Emma was 3 before I left Earth, she would have nightmares about monsters under her bed. She couldn't explain what frightened her. The words weren't there yet. But I knew. The theater had grown completely silent. Even the building's living system seemed quiet, as if the structure itself was listening. How did I know? Marcus continued. Because fear has a heartbeat. Loneliness has a posture. And pain. Pain has a way of moving through silence that speaks louder than any words. In the royal viewing box, Princess Lyra had turned slightly, her glowing eyes fixed on the human below. For the first time in months, something flickered in their depths, a spark of recognition that had been sleeping for far too long. Vexari's confidence wavered slightly, but his voice stayed dismissive. Touching poetry, Janitor. But we're discussing scientific principles, not parental instincts. The princess's condition has confused the greatest medical minds of 3-star systems. Are you suggesting that your emotional insights could succeed where brain surgeons and consciousness experts have failed? I'm suggesting that maybe they've been looking in the wrong place, Marcus replied quietly. The audience began to whisper among themselves. This wasn't going according to their expectations. The human was supposed to be embarrassed, easily dismissed. Instead, he stood with a calm certainty that seemed to fill the huge space around him. Dr. Athena, the Academy's head of consciousness studies, leaned forward in her seat. Her crystal form caught the light as she spoke. Mr. Chen, is it? Your personnel file shows no formal education in alien psychology or brain connection theory. On what basis do you make such a claim? Marcus turned toward the respected professor, his expression respectful but unshakable. 3 years ago, when I first started working here, I was cleaning the meditation chambers in the East Wing. Princess Lyra was there, as she often is. A cleaning robot broke and started making a high-pitched whine, a sound apparently very similar to the frequency of Zephyrian distress calls. He paused, letting the memory settle in his mind before continuing. The princess didn't make a sound, but her whole body reacted. Her glow flickered in patterns I'd never seen before. When I shut down the robot, she looked at me for just a moment, and I saw something in her eyes. Not emptiness, Recognition. The Empress, who had been motionless throughout the event, suddenly gripped her throne's armrests with enough force that the living metal bent under her fingers. "Since then," Marcus continued, "I've been watching. Not intruding, not assuming, just paying attention. The princess isn't silent because she can't speak. She's silent because no one has learned how to listen." A young Arcturan student in the upper sections called out, "That's impossible." "The neural plague damaged her speech centers permanently. The scans prove it." Marcus looked up toward the voice, his expression gentle but firm. "The scans prove damage to certain brain pathways. But consciousness isn't just electricity running through tissue. It's deeper than that. And just when everyone thought they would break, something was revealed that no one expected." Marcus walked to the center of the theater, directly beneath the great viewing window that showed the swirling beauty of the Zephyrian home world. The triple suns cast shifting patterns of light across his face as he spoke. "3 months ago," he said, his voice growing stronger with each word, "I was cleaning the old records in the Academy's old wing. There, in a section marked Outdated Communication Theories, I found research by Dr. Kellyan Morak." A gasp spread through the audience. Dr. Morak had been the Zephyrian Empire's most celebrated consciousness researcher until his theories about nonverbal mind-to-mind connection had been dismissed as fake science 50 years ago. His work suggested that some individuals, especially those who had experienced severe trauma, might develop alternative communication pathways. Not speech, not even traditional mind reading, but something he called harmonic consciousness, communication through matching body rhythms. Dr. Athena's crystal form had gone completely still. "Mr. Chen, those theories were proven wrong decades ago." "They were looking for the wrong signs," Marcus replied. Dr. Morak theorized that harmonic consciousness would show up not as thought transmission, but as synchronized biological responses, heartbeat, breathing patterns, even glowing light cycles. In the royal viewing box, the Empress had stood up from her throne. Her golden eyes were wide with something between hope and terror. Marcus continued, seemingly unaware of the storm his words were creating. "For the past 3 months, I've been keeping a journal. Every day during my cleaning rounds, I've noted Princess Lyrae's glow patterns, her breathing rhythms, her posture changes. And I've noticed something amazing." He paused, looking directly up at the royal viewing box. "They match with the emotional states of people around her. When someone enters the room angry, her light dims to a specific frequency. When someone comes near with real kindness, it brightens to match. She's not silent. She's been speaking all along. We just never learned her language." The theater had gone completely silent. Bexari's earlier confidence had disappeared entirely, and he stood at the podium looking lost and unsure. That's merely sympathetic biological response," he stammered. "It proves nothing about consciousness or communication." Marcus turned to face him, and for the first time his expression carried something harder than gentleness. "Is it? Then explain this." He reached into his uniform pocket and took out a small device, a body rhythm recorder that cleaning workers used to monitor the Academy's living architecture. "Yesterday, I stood outside Princess Lyrae's meditation chamber for exactly 15 minutes. This device recorded both my heartbeat and the changes in her glow, measured through the chamber's clear walls. The device projected a holographic display into the air above the theater floor. 2 wave lines appeared, one representing Marcus's heartbeat, the other the princess's light patterns. For the first few minutes, they moved independently. Then gradually they began to match. At the 7-minute mark, Marcus explained, I began thinking about my daughter Emma, about how much I missed her, how worried I was about earning enough to bring her to Zephyria Prime. Watch what happens to the princess's body rhythm at that exact moment. The holographic display showed the princess's light pattern suddenly shifting, taking on a slower, sadder beat that perfectly matched the emotional undertone of Marcus's heartbeat. And here, Marcus continued, at the 12-minute mark, I thought about the first time Emma laughed after her mother died, about hope surviving loss, about the way love can bridge any distance. The princess's glow pattern brightened dramatically, taking on complex harmonies that spoke of joy discovered in the depths of sorrow. The theater was completely silent. Even the building's living system seemed to have stopped humming. It wasn't just knowledge, it was legacy, and suddenly silence fell across the crowd. The holographic display continued to pulse above the theater floor, synchronized patterns creating a visible bridge between human emotion and Zephyrian consciousness. The Empress had moved to the edge of the royal viewing box, her hands pressed against the clear barrier, golden tears streaming down her cheeks. Princess Lyrae stood slowly in her section, her movement smooth and purposeful for the first time in 7 years. Her glow began to shift through colors that hadn't been seen since before the neural plague. Deep purples of deep thought, silver streams of wonder, and finally a warm golden glow that matched her mother's tears. "Impossible," whispered Dr. Athena, her crystal form bending the princess's light into rainbow patterns. The medical scans clearly showed complete brain pathway destruction in her speech centers. Marcus looked up at the respected professor with something approaching pity. "Dr. Athena, with respect, what if the neural plague didn't damage her ability to communicate? What if it made it better?" The question hung in the air like a challenge to everything the gathered scientists believed they knew. Marcus continued, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had discovered an uncomfortable truth. 7 years ago, Princess Lyrae caught what you call the neural plague during a diplomatic mission to the Proxima colonies. But I've been reading the original mission reports, the classified ones in the deepest record levels that I clean at night when no one's watching. Vexari found his voice at last. You accessed classified Imperial documents. That's punishable by death. The mission wasn't to establish trade routes, Marcus continued, ignoring the outburst. It was a rescue operation. Thousands of refugee children from the Century Wars were dying in quarantine camps, their trauma so severe that they had stopped speaking entirely. Princess Lyrae insisted on making direct contact despite the risks. The Empress's golden tears fell faster now, each one catching the light like a falling star. Her voice, when it came, was barely a whisper that somehow carried throughout the silent theater. "He knows. By the ancient stars, he knows." "The neural plague wasn't a disease," Marcus said, his words cutting through the silence like a blade. "It was a gift. The refugee children, in their desperate need for connection, somehow gave their ability to communicate without words directly to the princess. She didn't lose her voice. She gained theirs." Princess Lyrae stepped forward to the edge of her viewing platform. Her glow was now cycling through patterns so complex and beautiful that several students in the theater were openly crying at the sight. She raised her hand, and the gesture was so graceful, so filled with purposeful meaning that everyone understood she was about to try something amazing. Marcus looked up at her and nodded slightly, a movement so small it might have been mistaken for accident. But in that moment, something passed between them. An understanding that went beyond the barriers of species, social class, and situation. The princess's glow suddenly flared brilliant white, then settled into a pattern that pulsed with the rhythm of spoken words. Those in the theater who were sensitive to body energy, roughly half the gathered crowd, heard something impossible. It wasn't speech as they understood it, but it was unmistakably communication. Waves of meaning washed over them. Gratitude for being understood, sorrow for years of isolation, hope for connection, and underneath it all, a huge wellspring of love for her people and her mother. Dr. Athena's crystal form was vibrating with harmonic resonance, translating the princess's biocommunication into sounds you could hear. She's saying thank you, not just to him but to all of us, for finally listening, for finally understanding that silence doesn't mean absence. The Empress had sunk to her knees on her viewing platform, overcome by the first communication she had received from her daughter in 7 years. Through her tears, she managed to whisper, "My daughter, my beautiful wise daughter, you've been speaking to us all along." But the final blow came not from words. It came from a name the galaxy had long forgotten. Marcus stood in the center of the theater, bathed in the princess's golden glow, and for the first time since the event began, he smiled. It was a sad, knowing expression that spoke of secrets carried too long and truths finally given voice. "Dr. Kellyan Morak," he said quietly, "wasn't just any researcher. He was my grandfather." The words hit the theater like a physical force. Dr. Athena's crystal form went completely dark for a moment before flickering back to life. The Empress looked down from her platform with an expression of dawning recognition. "Morak took a human name when he settled on Earth," Marcus continued. "Kevin Marcus. He married my grandmother, had a son who became my father. For 50 years he continued his research in secret, documenting cases of harmonic consciousness, among human children who had experienced severe trauma. Marcus reached into another pocket of his uniform and took out a small, worn journal bound in living leather. This contains 30 years of his observations, patterns of communication that exist below the threshold of normal detection, methods of recognition that don't require technology or mind reading, just attention and patience. Vexari, who had been silent throughout the revelation, finally found his voice. Even if this is true, it doesn't change the fact that you're just a janitor, a cleaning worker who stumbled onto theories he couldn't possibly understand. Marcus turned to face the young Zentran, and his expression was gentle but firm. I have 3 doctoral degrees from Earth's Cambridge University, alien biology, consciousness studies, and between-species language. I came to Zapiria Prime not as a refugee seeking work, but as a researcher continuing my grandfather's legacy. The silence that followed was absolute. I took the cleaning job because it was the only position that would give me unlimited access to all areas of the academy, the only role that would let me watch without being watched, study without being questioned, document without interference. Dr. Athena's voice was barely audible. Dr. Marcus Chen, your papers on cross-species emotional connection. I cited them in my own research. But the biographical information said you died in a mining accident on Kepler 442b. My wife died, Marcus said simply. I let the galaxy think I had died too because I needed to disappear, to become invisible, to do the work that mattered without the weight of academic politics or professional jealousy. Princess Lyray's glow had settled into a steady, warm glow that seemed to embrace the entire theater. Through Dr. Athena's harmonic translation, her voice reached them all. He saw me when no one else could. He listened when no one else would. He understood that love doesn't require words, only presence. The Empress rose from her platform and, in a gesture that shattered every rule of imperial dignity, pressed her hand against the clear barrier between her and the theater floor. Dr. Chen, she said, her voice carrying the authority of absolute rule and the tremor of motherly gratitude, you have given me back my daughter. Name any reward within my power to grant. Marcus looked up at the royal platform, then around the theater at the hundreds of faces watching him with expressions ranging from wonder to shame. His response when it came was simple. Permission to bring my daughter Emma to Zapiria Prime, he said, and funding for a new research institute dedicated to studying harmonic consciousness, not as a curiosity or an oddity, but as a real form of communication that might help others who have been dismissed as unreachable. The princess's glow flared with what could only be described as joy. Through the harmonic translation, her meaning was clear. Yes, and I will be the first student. And as they walked away, no one dared laugh again, for they finally understood what they had witnessed. 6 months later, the Marcus Chen Institute for Harmonic Consciousness had become the most wanted research facility in 3-star systems. Built into the floating gardens of Zapiria Prime, its glowing walls pulsed with the same gentle rhythms that Princess Lyrai had taught them to recognize as the heartbeat of silent communication. Emma Chen, now 9 years old, sat in the Institute's main laboratory, her small hands moving gracefully through the holographic interface that showed body rhythm patterns from across the galaxy. Her father's gift for seeing beyond surface appearances had shown up in her as an almost supernatural ability to recognize emotional harmonies in any species. Dad, she said, looking up from a particularly complex pattern recorded from a Vegan refugee camp. This one's sad, but there's something else. Hope, maybe, like they're waiting for someone to notice them? Marcus smiled as he joined her at the console. What do you think we should do about it? Send Princess Lyrai, Emma said without hesitation. She's good at helping people remember how to speak without words. Across the laboratory, Princess Lyrai worked with a group of young beings who had been dismissed as mentally impaired by normal medical science. Her glow danced in complex patterns as she demonstrated harmonic communication techniques, her students responding with their own species-specific variations of the same basic principles. The Empress, now a regular visitor to the Institute, watched her daughter with open pride. The golden tears that had once spoken of sorrow now reflected joy as she witnessed the ripple effects of recognition spreading throughout the galaxy. Your Majesty, Dr. Athena approached, her crystal form reflecting the soft light of the Institute's walls. The latest reports from the outer colonies show remarkable success rates. 3 refugee camps have reported breakthrough communications with previously unresponsive children. The Arcturan Council has requested Princess Lyrai's presence at their yearly empathy summit. The Empress nodded, but her attention stayed focused on her daughter and the small group of students surrounding her. Dr. Athena, do you know what the most beautiful aspect of all this is? The scientific breakthrough, Your Majesty. The advancement in between-species understanding. No, the Empress said softly. It's that my daughter is finally speaking. Not just communicating, speaking from her heart about things that matter. And the galaxy is listening. In the observation deck above, Marcus stood with Emma, watching the scene unfold below. His daughter's hand slipped into his, her small fingers warm and reassuring. Dad, she said quietly, do you think Mom would be proud of what we're doing here? Marcus squeezed her hand gently, his eyes never leaving the sight of Princess Lyrai teaching a young Proximan child how to express joy through body rhythm patterns. I think she already knew, sweetheart. I think she sent us exactly where we needed to be. 3 years later, the Institute had expanded to 12 worlds with over 2,000 documented cases of successful harmonic consciousness communication. The neural plague that had once been considered a devastating disability was now understood as a gift, a form of evolution that allowed certain individuals to serve as bridges between the verbal and the silent, the understood and the overlooked. Vexari, humbled by his experience at the Academy, had become one of the Institute's most dedicated researchers. His natural arrogance transformed into passionate advocacy for the misunderstood. His first published paper, The Arrogance of Assumption, Why We Must Listen to What We Cannot Hear, became required reading at diplomatic schools across 3 galaxies. And on quiet evenings, when the triple suns of Zapiria Prime painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, Marcus would sit in his office and write letters to his late wife, telling her about the daughter who had learned to hear the songs of stars, about the princess who had taught a galaxy to communicate with light, and about the simple truth that had changed everything. Love doesn't require words, only the courage to recognize its presence in the silence between heartbeats. In a universe built on arrogance, sometimes a single act of recognition is enough to shift the stars themselves.